The moment Russia turned its back was the moment the world lost sight of what could be done with vision and relentless effort. This is not a tale of simple inheritance. It's a saga of transformation against odds that would make the faint-hearted crumble. When Russia gave up on critical strategic assets, be it in defense technology, energy projects, or industrial complexes, many saw decay, obsolescence, and failure. India saw opportunity. That is the chasm between empires that fade and nations that rise. This wasn't handed to India on a silver platter. It was a minefield riddled with complexity, technical decay, geopolitical suspicion, and immense inertia. Yet, the Indian mindset, steeped in resilience and unshakable belief in self-determination, faced these challenges head-on. Where Russia saw expired technology and outdated infrastructure, India saw a foundation upon which to build a future. The key was not replication but reinvention. Consider the defense sector, once a maze of underfunded factories, aging designs, and fragmented management. India inherited this labyrinth and transformed it with surgical precision. It did not rely on nostalgia for Soviet-era machinery. Instead, it dissected every piece, understood the mechanics, and then infused it with new life: modern electronics, AI-enabled systems, and indigenous manufacturing capacities. The factories that Russia abandoned as obsolete became the birthplace of cutting-edge innovations that now safeguard India's borders and project power abroad. This revival extends beyond military might. Energy infrastructure, once languishing due to neglect and sanctions, found new investors, new technologies, and a new mission under Indian stewardship. India recognized the strategic value of these assets not merely as power sources, but as levers of geopolitical influence. By controlling these energy nodes, India rewired its own strategic autonomy while altering regional power equations. This was a calculated, logical maneuver, turning what was discarded into a currency of strength. Critically, India's approach dismantled the fatalism that so often accompanies inherited challenges. Many nations inherit legacy systems and treat them as burdens, shackles that bind progress. India refused to accept that narrative. Instead, it imposed a new one: that decay is just potential in disguise, and that true power emerges when you transform liabilities into assets with vision and will. This transformation also demanded an emotional reckoning, a collective resolve not to be defined by what others had abandoned. The workers, engineers, scientists, and policymakers involved embraced a fierce pride in reclaiming what the world had written off. This was no charity. It was a battle for dignity, a war against invisibility, a claim to relevance. Each refurbished factory, every retooled pipeline, and every repurposed technology was a statement. India refuses to be the follower. India chooses to be the creator. In this, India set a new standard for what it means to inherit strategic assets. It's not about what you receive, it's about what you make of what you receive. This process is not abstract. It is concrete, measurable, and repeatable. The industries revived under India's banner now generate millions of jobs, secure vital supply chains, and project power far beyond their borders. This resurgence reshapes the very architecture of global influence, because power in the modern world is about control over resources, technology, and the ability to act decisively. India's revival of these assets has changed the rules of engagement. So, when you hear that Russia gave up, understand the scale of India's leap. The leap not just to fill a void, but to build a beast that does not sleep, a beast that does not apologize for its strength, a beast born from neglect, fueled by purpose, and unleashed by vision. This is the engine of transformation. And it has only just begun. Vision is not a luxury reserved for dreamers. It is the weapon of those who dare to reshape reality. While Russia saw shadows and decline in the remnants it left behind, India saw a battlefield ripe for conquest, not of armies, but of minds, industries, and destinies. Where others retreated into cynicism and paralysis, India's leadership harnessed a ruthless clarity of purpose, the belief that no asset is worthless if you have the eyes to see its hidden potential, and the courage to claim it. This kind of vision is rare because it demands something almost impossible: the ability to see beyond present circumstances and to imagine futures others refuse to conceive. Most nations are shackled by immediate pressures, distracted by short-term gains, or paralyzed by the magnitude of inherited problems. India, however, cultivated a mindset honed by centuries of survival against impossible odds, a mindset that understands the value of patience without surrender, of long-term focus over momentary expedience. India's vision was not born overnight. It is the product of strategic patience and relentless planning. The decision to revive neglected Russian assets was not a whimsical gamble, but a carefully calculated bet backed by research, partnerships, and a pragmatic evaluation of India's own needs. Leaders knew that to leap forward, they first had to step into the ruins and extract value. This required a blend of humility to learn what had gone wrong and confidence to fix it without replicating old mistakes. What sets India apart is how it married this vision with concrete action. Vision without execution is fantasy. India made it real. The government aligned policies to prioritize revitalization, funneled investments into targeted sectors, and empowered innovators willing to challenge orthodoxies. This was not just economic revival, it was a cultural renaissance. Engineers reimagined factory floors, scientists adapted outdated tech into cutting-edge systems, and administrators dismantled bureaucratic inertia with fresh dynamism. Moreover, India's vision was inclusive. It recognized that the power to transform must come from the people who are closest to the assets. Local workforces were not sidelined but trained, respected, and integrated into the narrative of national resurgence. This created a collective ownership, a psychological revolution that fueled motivation beyond monetary incentives. The revival became a source of national pride, a shared mission to turn the forsaken into the formidable. The vision extended beyond mere economic or military metrics. India understood that these assets were symbols of sovereignty, markers of a nation's ability to defend itself and assert influence. Reclaiming them was a statement to the world. India would no longer play a secondary role, but take its place as a leader shaping the new global order. This psychological dimension, transforming legacy into leverage, was as critical as any factory upgrade or policy reform. This unyielding focus also meant resisting distractions. When critics doubted the feasibility of reviving what seemed obsolete, India persisted. When external pressures attempted to undermine or delay progress, India doubled down. The vision became a shield against defeatism and external interference. It inspired confidence internally and demanded respect externally. The power of vision is often misunderstood as a vague hope. But India's example reveals that it is a strategic force, grounded in logic, informed by history, and energized by emotion. It is the fuel that turns neglect into innovation, despair into determination, and abandonment into ascendancy. India's unyielding focus is a lesson to all nations. When the world sees no hope, that is the moment to build one. When giants stumble and give up, the future belongs to those who dare to dream with their eyes wide open. When an empire crumbles, it often clings desperately to tradition, holding on to old formulas, outdated processes, and decaying hierarchies. Russia, weighed down by the inertia of its legacy, found itself trapped in this cycle. India, by contrast, refused to be bound by the past. It adopted an adaptive mindset that didn't just update what existed, but reimagined the entire framework of progress. This was not incremental improvement. It was quantum leap thinking innovation powered by agility, resilience, and an unrelenting drive to transcend limitations. This difference between clinging to tradition and embracing innovation is the fulcrum on which India's transformation pivots. Russia's legacy industries, defense complexes, energy infrastructures, and technological hubs were built in an era that demanded control through sheer scale and rigidity. These structures prioritized uniformity and hierarchy, stifling creativity and responsiveness. Over time, these attributes became liabilities, making them ill-equipped to respond to the rapidly changing geopolitical and technological landscapes. India, aware of these limitations, injected a fresh paradigm into these legacy assets. Instead of trying to revive outdated processes, India deconstructed them, identified core strengths, and rebuilt them using modern methodologies. This meant replacing monolithic, centralized command structures with decentralized, agile teams empowered to experiment and adapt. It meant infusing AI and digital automation where manual processes had created bottlenecks. It meant integrating global best practices with indigenous knowledge, an approach that respected tradition but refused to be shackled by it. Innovation in this context was not limited to technology. It was a mindset, a culture of continuous questioning, learning, and iteration. India's engineers and managers challenged the assumption that legacy assets were too old to be useful. They asked, what if we can turn the perceived weaknesses into strengths? What if outdated factories become laboratories for new materials? What if old weapon systems become platforms for AI integration? These questions sparked a cascade of breakthroughs. The mindset also embraced failure as part of progress. In a world where Russia's institutions often penalized mistakes harshly, India cultivated environments where controlled risk-taking was encouraged. Pilot projects, experimental workshops, and cross-disciplinary collaborations became commonplace. This culture unleashed creativity that transformed slow, bureaucratic processes into dynamic innovation hubs. India's adaptive mindset was also strategic. It didn't innovate for innovation's sake. Every technological advance, every process re-engineered, was aligned with a clear national goal strengthening sovereignty, increasing self-reliance, and enhancing global competitiveness. This gave innovation a focused purpose, creating a feedback loop where success reinforced vision and vice versa. Furthermore, India understood that innovation must be inclusive. It leveraged its vast human capital, diverse, youthful, and increasingly skilled, to drive change. Training programs, public, private partnerships, and academic collaborations ensured that innovation was not confined to elite circles but diffused widely. This democratization of innovation empowered communities, invigorated local economies, and created a sustainable ecosystem for growth. One of the most powerful examples of this mindset is India's work in defense technology. Rather than importing entire systems, India began developing modular technologies, flexible, upgradable components that could be adapted quickly to evolving threats. This contrasts sharply with legacy Russian systems designed for static, hierarchical warfare. The result is a defense industry that can rapidly iterate and respond to new challenges, making India's military not just stronger but smarter. India's innovation ethos also challenged global norms. It developed cost-effective technologies tailored for its unique needs, proving that cutting-edge innovation doesn't require extravagant spending but intelligent application of resources. This approach attracted international attention, positioning India as a leader in frugal innovation, a beacon for other developing nations. The refusal to be trapped by tradition extended beyond industry. It shaped India's diplomatic and strategic posture. India embraced multipolarity, diversified partnerships, and digital diplomacy, innovations in statecraft that contrast with Russia's often rigid and confrontational approach. This flexibility enabled India to navigate complex global dynamics, turning legacy disadvantages into strategic assets. In sum, India's triumph over Russia's abandoned assets is not just a tale of revival but a testament to the power of an adaptive, innovative mindset. By refusing to be bound by outdated traditions, and by fostering a culture that prizes creativity, agility, and strategic clarity, India has outpaced a legacy power stuck in the past. It has shown that true strength lies not in what you inherit, but in how you transform it. This lesson is profound. In a world defined by rapid change, innovation is the lifeblood of survival. Those who cling to tradition risk extinction. Those who adapt and innovate become the architects of the future. India has chosen its path. It has become not a follower of history but a maker of it. In the ruthless theater of global power, isolation is often viewed as a death sentence. A nation left alone, stripped of allies and avenues, is written off as weak, vulnerable, irrelevant. When Russia withdrew, whether by choice or circumstance, it left behind not just physical assets, but a void in global connections. The world expected those assets to fade into obscurity, to rot in silence, as isolation smothered potential. India, however, saw isolation not as a curse but as a call to action, a catalyst to forge new alliances, rethink old frameworks, and reimagine what strategic partnership means in the 21st century. This is where India's diplomatic genius comes into sharp relief. While many would recoil from the stigma of inheriting what Russia abandoned, India leaned in, recognizing that true power is measured not only by what you control but by who stands with you. Strategic partnerships are not relics of the Cold War or mere transactional relationships. They are living, evolving networks of influence, innovation, and mutual growth. India's ability to transform global isolation into opportunity is a masterclass in redefining geopolitics. First, India understood that old alliances built on rigid ideological blocks or zero. Some competition no longer served the complexities of today's world. Instead of seeking to replicate the Soviet-era alignment Russia once maintained, India embraced multipolarity. This meant engaging with a diverse array of partners across continents, industries, and cultures. It meant building bridges with traditional Western powers, deepening ties with emerging Asian economies, and revitalizing connections with African and Latin American nations. Each relationship was a thread woven into a fabric of strategic resilience. Importantly, India did not just pursue partnerships for the sake of appearances or economic gains. It anchored its diplomacy in shared values and mutual benefit. This subtle but powerful shift means partnerships are built on trust, respect, and complementary strengths rather than mere expediency. India offers technological expertise, infrastructure investment, and educational exchanges, while gaining access to new markets, critical resources, and geopolitical support. This is diplomacy reimagined, not transactional but transformational. India also leveraged its unique position as a democracy with a growing economy and a technological powerhouse to carve a niche in global governance. By actively participating in multilateral institutions and spearheading initiatives like the International Solar Alliance and the Coalition for Disaster-Resilient Infrastructure, India positioned itself as a leader, not a follower. These platforms allow India to amplify its voice, influence global agendas, and invite others into its vision of sustainable, inclusive growth. Moreover, India's partnerships extend beyond governments to include private sectors, civil society, and academic institutions. Recognizing that power today flows through innovation ecosystems, India cultivates cross-border collaborations in technology, healthcare, and energy. This multidimensional approach makes partnerships robust and less vulnerable to geopolitical shocks. It creates a network of interdependencies where the success of one fuels the success of all. This reimagining of partnerships has a direct impact on the assets once abandoned by Russia. By integrating these assets into broader global networks, India transforms isolated resources into hubs of international cooperation and development. Energy grids connect with regional markets, defense technologies align with global standards, and scientific research crosses borders seamlessly. This connectivity multiplies the strategic value of what was left behind. India's diplomatic strategy also turns challenges into leverage. Facing skepticism from some quarters about its intentions or capacity, India responds with transparency and consistent action. It invites scrutiny but also demonstrates capability. This builds credibility over time, making India a preferred partner even in contested spaces. It shifts the narrative from uncertainty to reliability. The emotional power behind this strategy is profound. India refuses to be a passive recipient of global isolation. Instead, it asserts itself as a confident, capable architect of its destiny. It sends a message to the world, and to itself, that no abandonment will ever define its fate. This psychological stance empowers every citizen, every institution, every entrepreneur involved in the revival effort. It transforms isolation from a limitation into a launchpad. Furthermore, this approach upends traditional power dynamics. It shows smaller or emerging nations that strategic partnerships are not about subordination, but about agency. India exemplifies that with the right vision and diplomacy, a nation can rewrite its place in the world order, regardless of past setbacks or global biases. This is a revolutionary message in a world where power often appears fixed and predetermined. In conclusion, India's reimagining of strategic partnerships is not a mere footnote in its rise. It is a fundamental pillar. By turning the isolation left by Russia into a sprawling network of alliances rooted in trust, innovation, and shared purpose, India crafts an unstoppable momentum. It turns abandoned assets into beacons of cooperation and influence, reshaping not just its own trajectory but the very architecture of global power. When the world thought those assets were lost, India built a future on their foundation, one partnership at a time. When a mighty power relinquishes what it once fiercely guarded, history rarely watches quietly. It observes, judges, and waits. Russia's abandonment was not just a loss of material assets. It was a symbolic shift in the global balance. Yet, where others saw decline, India seized the moment to unleash a new force, a beast born not from brute strength alone, but from strategic mastery, innovative spirit, and relentless ambition. This beast is not a metaphor, it is a living reality, reshaping global power dynamics with the precision of a calculated storm. The rise of this beast is rooted in a profound understanding. Power is never static, it flows, shifts, and transforms. Traditional centers of influence cannot rely on past glories. India's ascension embodies this truth. By absorbing and transforming what Russia discarded, India didn't just fill a vacuum, it created a new vortex of influence that pulls nations, economies, and technologies into its orbit. This beast is a symbol of India's sovereignty, resilience, and vision manifested on the global stage. This transformation is first and foremost geopolitical. India's control over formerly Russian assets grants it leverage in regions critical to the 21st century, Central Asia, the Indo-Pacific, and beyond. These assets act as strategic footholds, enabling India to assert influence in ways that transcend traditional diplomacy. The world now watches as India shifts from a regional power to a decisive global player, whose actions ripple through international relations, security architectures, and economic corridors. The beast's power lies in its multidimensionality. It is military strength bolstered by indigenous innovation, economic growth fueled by revitalized industries, and diplomatic savvy that forges new alliances while respecting old traditions. This complexity makes it unpredictable and formidable. India's newfound capabilities allow it to respond flexibly to challenges from cyber warfare to climate change, demonstrating that modern power is as much about adaptability as it is about force. Emotionally, the unleashed beast embodies a collective awakening. It channels the aspirations of over 1 billion people who refuse to accept marginalization or dependency. It stands as a testament to what determination and vision can achieve. Every success in reviving abandoned assets becomes a rallying cry, a story of triumph against the odds, fueling national pride and inspiring future generations to dream bigger and fight harder. The beast also symbolizes a break from the narrative of victimhood that often accompanies former colonial or peripheral nations. India's rise is a narrative of agency, proving that relinquished power can be reclaimed not through nostalgia, but through innovation and strategic courage. It teaches the world that abandonment is not the end, but a new beginning, a call to awaken latent strength and rewrite destiny. Critically, this beast challenges existing power hierarchies. It forces established players to recalibrate their strategies, alliances, and assumptions. India's growing influence compels traditional powers to engage differently, negotiate earnestly, and sometimes concede space. This rebalancing of power is neither chaotic nor accidental. It is the product of deliberate choices, sustained effort, and an unyielding refusal to accept a subordinate role. The beast's emergence is also a message to other nations watching from the sidelines. It offers a blueprint for transformation in an era of uncertainty. The ability to absorb setbacks, harness innovation, and strategically engage with the world can turn even the most daunting challenges into historic opportunities. India's journey from inheritor of abandonment to architect of power is a roadmap for those who dare to follow. Ultimately, the unleashed beast is not just a symbol of India's current strength, it is a promise of what lies ahead. It signals a future where India will continue to expand its influence, deepen its capabilities, and shape the rules of the global game. This is not destiny handed down by history, it is destiny forged in the crucible of vision, innovation, and relentless resolve. In this moment, India stands not just as a rising power, but as a game changer, a force that has taken what others discarded and turned it into a beast that roars across the continents, shaking the foundations of old orders and heralding a new era of possibility and power.